And I've heard tangentially things about him. I heard Turkey Tom talk about him on PK, but I don't like. I've been fucking not wanting to push far into this at all in any form or fashion. Is Christian?
Yeah.
I kind of want to know about it, but I don't all at the same time because I just feel uncomfortable. I don't understand what the fuck this is.
Same.
I didn't hear about this at all when it happened. I'm completely blind to it. So what is Christian? I know it's a person. I'm not retarded, but
Sure. I mean, so Chris Chan is a old school YouTuber of sorts, old school internet user. One of the original lolcows, the most famous lolcow of all time. I'm one of the few people to have met him, and I made a 5-hour long documentary with him, or actually met him in person, spent some time with him. I believe it was the New Year's of 2019 going into 2020, so like right before COVID, I filmed with him, and then I spent 2 years crafting this giant video, just going over his life. And
is that before or after he was in prison?
Oh, this was before he was in prison. Yeah, okay. We're working on this documentary, and then that happens as we're focusing on it. The interesting thing with that is, so Chris Chan's been known since 2007, I would say, online. They graduated high school in 2000. So, they were in their mid-20s when they were kind of discovered by the internet. And over the course of 15 years, they just kind of built up this notoriety where how I would describe it is they have the perfect combination of having a level of intelligence, being able to use a computer, being able to draw comics, upload them, make accounts, those basic, mental functions that, you have to have a certain IQ.
65% of people cannot do this.
Well, yeah. So there's a good portion of the population that can't. So they're able to do those things, but also an extreme gullibleness that you would most likely not see from someone who has those capabilities. So because of that, you have this weird thing where they, get told that they are dating this woman that is not a real person, it's a troll. Then the person gets kidnapped by the Chinese government. It's going to be shipped to China, and they're currently being held in Ohio. So they're able to get in a car with the driver's license and drive across the country to Ohio to find them. But at no point were they able to realize or connect, hey, this isn't a real person. I'm being trolled here. So because of that, it's just this long odyssey of event after event after event. So they call them sagas in the Chris Chan sphere, where eventually it turns into Chris Chan changing genders and becoming a woman, and is now known as Christine Weston Chandler. Then they become the reincarnation of Jesus. So they think that they are, a savior, and that they're going to, bring upon Armageddon, I guess, of some sort, or the end of the world. And how that's going to happen is his cartoon character Sonichu is, his alter ego is kind of there's sort of like a trinity thing going on between Chris Chan and Sonichu, or maybe it's more of a God and Jesus sort of analogy you could go with. This happened. I met Christine at that point of time, and then eventually after that, as I'm working on it, my documentary, Christine, went to prison after they admitted to having intercourse with their mother, and then they spent about 2 years in prison, and then they got out, and now they claim that they didn't do it, and they're currently under the care of some group that helps them make artwork and little clay medallions of their Sonichu character, and they take a commission to be the manager and pay their bills for them, and that's currently where it stands.
So I am probably not going to speak properly from this second on. I'm going to fuck up, and I know I'm going to. It's because my mind works so fucking fast.
Yeah.
Not going to be perfect with it. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be a douchebag. I'm trying to say things properly, but I'm not going to. I know I'm not. So as a whole, when you met this person, obviously they are kind of different. They're kind of uncomfortable at that point, even before they go to prison. Did you feel like there was more off than what was known at that point, or was there just a drastic shock of like, well, I didn't expect that to be said, or I didn't expect that to happen? Because like at some point when you're reading this whole, he thinks his Pikachu Sonic clone is Jesus, and you know he's the second coming and everything else, like you're gonna think that person's weird, and I understand that, but like did you feel even more awkward socially with them? Was it, or were they more comfortable around you? Like, was there that disparity there?
Whenever I film one of these, I just kind of describe it as a bit of a roller coaster. The roller coaster ride is you're driving to their location, and that's kind of the uphill. And then when you actually get out of your car with a camera and meet them and shake their hand, and you start filming, that's like the downward slope of the roller coaster, and then you're on for the ride. The adrenaline's
Yeah,
pumping.
exactly.
So with Christine, she was very nice in person, just extremely strange, of course. But I was very respectful. They were very respectful to me. Had a decent time hanging out with them in terms of getting good material, getting good footage. I played their card game, which I didn't understand the rules to because it was very convoluted. We chatted, we played Tetris a little bit. We went to an Indian restaurant the next day where they did an Apu accent in the Indian restaurant. There was a lot of little weird things that happened. I would say that in hindsight, that was the most kind of concerning thing in terms of at one point they were talking very strangely about how, like Jesus, they have the ability to heal people through touch. And as they at one point get up and then put their hand on my shoulder to heal me, and then just an awkward silence, Christine has her arm on my shoulder and just has her eyes closed, focused to heal me. And at that point, I asked her if she's been able to do that on her mom. Is her mom a believer? And she said, "Oh yeah, I've healed my mom before." And later on, 2 years down the road, when it got exposed that she was doing things to her mother, at least she claimed it. In those, she was saying that she was healing her mother through having intercourse with her. And then I went back and I looked at my footage, and the similar terminology was used when I was talking to her 2 years ago about healing her mother through touch. So that was a bit disturbing because I still have to question was something going on all that time ago.
Well,
Right
I would
before.
assume that if it happened once, it was happening throughout the entire time. Once that persona came out, and obviously, I'm not accusing. I know nothing. I'm just finding out about the shit now. Like I'm not a part of this culture. But when you look at this stuff now, or you look at this stuff then, did you see this person as if they were like a boogie character, where they were leaning into a character and a persona, or did they actually perceive themselves as this?
Oh, not a character at all. No, no. Christine believes 100% everything
That
that
would
she
be my
says.
assumption, just like
Yeah.
from seeing all these stories and the engagement. Like, there's people like that out there, and
Oh,
this is one of
absolutely.
them.
But like somebody who leans into it a little bit too far is completely different than somebody who just lets something take over their life, and then their fans kind of gaslight them into doing more and more and more and more. And that's kind of like the weird line of gray area of what the internet's become, is like, what is this? Is this real?
There were times in Chris's past where he wasn't at it seemed like he was a little bit more mentally with it, to the point where you had a question, did he know trolls were messing with him, but he enjoyed the interaction he was getting of living in like a little bit of a fairy tale? Because from a very young age, Chris was obsessed with watching television, playing video games, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, all these different shows and properties. Was it a bit of a LARP for him? Of I'm playing make believe with these people. These people are pretending to be my girlfriends. They're pretending to be my enemies. They're pretending to be Shigeru Miyamoto at Nintendo, stealing my Sonichu character, and he's going back and forth with them and making videos, fighting with them. And after he was trolled, he'd admit, I got trolled, I got tricked, and played into it a little bit back in the 2008,
And that's
2009 era. I think over time, it kind of just became worse as things went on.
and that's where it becomes really, really hard to kind of perceive or understand, is you see the delusion and the mental illness kind of become worse and worse and worse in that situation, then does it seem like it was just mental illness, or did they all of a sudden, did it just connect with them and they're like, this is all I have, therefore this is all I have to be?
My assumption would be that that foundation was not up to code to begin with.
Oh, probably not. But like, if you look at things like Kanye West, which is a much larger kind of
Oh, yeah.
idea
Right.
in this, you have somebody who kind of wasn't there fully, but became that Christ-like figure to some people. He was the best in the world at what he did, supposedly. I don't think that. There are some people that do. And then, like, you see a relatively similar kind of gaslighting to themselves of, this is what I am now. Of, I'm the greatest person that's ever been. I'm God's second coming. Oh, I'm going to change myself. I'm Jesus now. Like, you see very similar pathing in the, this is what I was, and then slowly kind of growing in the same way. It's like, that's the only way that they kind of knew how to create out of their mental illness, was they have this mental illness. It kind of gives them credibility to speak in this one specific way. They might not think of this like logically, but I'm trying to like break it down from like a third person perspective. And then they're like, okay, well, if I do this, people like it. So if I do this always, everybody's going to love it, right? And then all of a sudden it becomes the whole I am God. It's that same God complex that you see in so many different kind of places and so many different kind of alleys. At least that's how my mind sees it. Like,
I've met like 3 people that thought they were Jesus in my life, so they're just out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people like that.
Mhm.
It's the difference between how interesting they are. If a person's just they're mentally unhinged, and then they go to church all the time, and now they believe, hey, I'm now Jesus. There's not much to that. There's a lot of people like that. But when you are, trolled constantly for 15 years, and you believe that there's a Sonichu character that just starts off as like a little comic book series for you, but then you start talking as if Sonichu's real and there's another dimension, and then eventually it kind of morphs into this thing where Sonichu's actually, the Holy Spirit, and I'm Jesus, and the owner of Kiwi Farms is the reincarnation of Judas. It's there's all this lore and all of this complexity to it that you're not seeing off your average crazy person, and because of that, people obsess, and when people obsess, they come up with elaborate trolls to try to poke them so they'll do something
and
else
it seems
fun.
like then they buy it, and then all of a sudden it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger into what it actually is. That's why it's kind of hard to pinpoint this shit without being there from day one. Is like, where did this start? What happened with it? When people buy into things, or they're told, oh, well, it's really kind of hard to find the bullshit in it after you find sort of kind of confirm it in your mind of like, this is what it is now. Once you confirm it of this is what it is, that person that was there before is gone. I am this now.
I would say
I am that personality.
I would say that Chris experienced a lot of trauma as a child, and not all of it's known. That's the thing I've learned, is that there's portions of his childhood where, an example of this would be their parents were living in separate houses, and the explanation for that was that they wanted to be in a different school district, something along those lines. And they couldn't sell their old house, so the one stayed in it, which was clearly, in hindsight, me looking into it, they were separated, and they just told Chris some lie. And then at one point they were living together in the same house, but then they had to move out of it and move into an apartment because the neighbors were spreading nasty rumors about them, as he put it. And that's kind of was like accepted as part of the story for the longest time. But then I'm looking into it, I'm like, you don't leave your house because the neighbors are spreading rumors about you. Something else happened there. My personal possible theory was like they were swingers and there was something else going on in the neighborhood.
Or if we know what happened afterwards, I know nothing. I don't know ages. I'm kind of just looking at it. If shit happened as an adult with his mom, the neighbor seeing something happening would be like, yeah, did you see Chris doing shit with his mom through the window last night? Like, I wouldn't be surprised.
There was definitely trauma with the parents having both of them kind of left their previous families to be with each other, and then they had Chris when they were older in life. I think Barb was 40 when she had Chris, and the dad was like 52, early 50s. So they were a bit older. The dad was clearly just like a boomer, like served in the Korean War. He was an older guy, and then on top of that, he was like old school, even from that era. Like he just, would listen to music from the 40s. It just looked like, even when he was 60 years old, he looked like he was 80. So he just like had these older parents that and he just absorbed kind of their older mindset, but they were also very dysfunctional. And there was a lot of these traumatic things that were happening in his life. Apparently some abuse from a babysitter of some sort. He claims he was locked in a closet by her at one point, and then he didn't talk for multiple years after that. Just all these really strange things that don't quite line up. And
most of it doesn't make sense.
So he never left the house, spent 5 years trying to get a 2-year associate's degree at the local community college. And he just like lived at home. He worked at Wendy's for like a week or two before getting fired. That was his only time he was ever employed. And then, his parents have no concept of what the internet is. And then he's being trolled at the age of 26 online. And his parents kind of played into it and believed the trolls too, to a certain extent, which was another interesting aspect, to the point where his parents were writing up like letters to send to the trolls for him. And they'd call up the house.
This might be a reach, and I don't know if you guys had this in your high schools too, where they kind of like segregated off the special needs kids to like one room that like couldn't be a part of society, but they wanted them to be in school still. Instead of having a teacher come to the home, they kind of just put them in a room together. They're like, here, this is where all your classes are and stuff like that.
Every once in a while you catch a glance of them holding hands and walking across the rest of the school.
Or like they're for some reason actually in the cafeteria during lunchtime, and they make a scene or something like that.
Oh
like,
yeah.
That's what it seems like to me, is like he's the kid that they kind of kept away from everybody, which may or may not be because they did weird shit. It may or may not be because he did weird shit. And then all of a sudden, as those things kind of scaled, they gaslit him almost into believing that this thing was the real thing, or they weren't intelligent enough to actually understand. So he might not be intelligent enough to understand.
Well, Chris describes his high school experience as the best years of his life, and what this comes down to is the gal pals, as he calls them. The theory is that Bob went into the school in that freshman year and talked to the principal and said, "Hey, Chris is like, very likely to get bullied. Can we do something to stop this?" And the principal got in some of the upstanding girls in the school that like were into doing helping with charity things to like bump up their resume for colleges, and talk to them and said, "Hey, can you befriend Chris and like protect him so no one messes with him, just so he has a bit of a friend group?" So he would eat lunch with the gal pals every single day at school. And on top of that, he was developing his comics. Everyone was like giving him thumbs up. All the teachers were telling him good job with that. And he was doing some like actually, I would say in high school, it wasn't he was just an autistic kid, but at the same time, he was very high functioning in terms of, when he was 13 or 14, he designed a website on Notepad, just like pure code, typed it up himself in 1999 or something. That was a pretty impressive feat for just some random kid to just be self-taught and
learn how to write HTML
learn how to write HTML from scratch to design a website. I can't do that right now. Maybe I could figure it out.
If you bring me back to 2006, I might be able to. I have to be able to see the MySpace code and edit from there, but I definitely could do it. It would just take a little bit.
So Chris was able to do that when he was just a teenager. He was designing these comics. At 14 years old, if you froze Chris, it was actually, hey, maybe this kid could like maybe learn how to be a programmer. And even though he's never going to be like 100% picking up on social cues in his life, he could go to work.
He just went down the degen path.
Yeah, unfortunately, he kind of peaked at 14 or 15, and the comics he drew at that age, his art style never changed from there. He's still, if you look at his comics from when he was 15, they still look the same at 41. It just never advanced.
To bring this out of this, I have a story I'll go into in a second, but when you look at degen culture as a whole, especially in this form of Christian, with the way the world is going and stuff like that, we're seeing kind of the right and the conservatism kind of be the thing that's weird now and the thing that's withdrawn. Does that actually aid these people who are kind of falling into degen culture back in the day if what we're seeing is now the degen culture being the common? Are we just going to have more Christians, or is the conservatism and the autists going towards the conservatism route, is that going to help the situation as we move out of this? Because I think we are. I think we're headed towards the right direction if things keep becoming louder.
Yeah, Chris Chan, I'm not.
I'm trying to bring it out of the scope.
Yeah. Tell me if like I'm getting the point across of what you're trying to get at. With Chris Chan, his parents were extremely conservative. They would bring him to church. They were.
I could see where that would be a
strongly against. So like it's interesting because the degenerate people you see on TikTok with doing all
that's
this
why
stuff.
I'm saying like we see the degeneracy get pushed to everyone now, and it becomes the norm. Is that as we pull out of it, because I think that's where we're going, like slowly, but I think it's going back to normal what it was in the early 2000s. Like I see that changing. Are we going to have more problems now because the weirdos are the parents and that degeneracy is going to be baked in? Are we going to have a weirder situation now with how exaggerated that's going to become? Or is the normalcy of what the conservative people are giving, and that being the weird thing and the rebellious thing as these kids grow up, is that what's going to happen?
I think. Wait. I think Zach's just too retarded to just say like, is the manosphere going to be positive?
No, because I don't like the manosphere at all. Fuck
well,
that.
that's kind of like, even though that has like the stigma around it, that's kind of what is attracting people away.
Absolutely, I understand your point.
Yeah.
I was trying to word it correctly, and it's just not working at 3:52. My mind's not there yet.
I would say that people that will go online and act like I'm against the degeneracy of the online world. We should be more conservative. I'm converting to Islam or Christianity. I think a lot of those people are just as degenerate, but they're just not talking about it. They're just behind the scenes. They're doing a bunch of degenerate stuff. They're not promoting it. They're not coming out saying that they're a furry and have a tail on them and showing it off on TikTok. Those people are probably watching the same degenerate stuff online. They're just not as forthcoming, and they'll trash it publicly.
Yeah, I believe that.
I wonder if that publicity of it from these kids' parents will affect them to go farther into the degeneracy, or if it will make the rebellious, I don't accept this, become more the standard, like we just saw in the 2000s. Like there was a flip. We saw the flip. As the flip happens back, is it going to come back to neutral, or is it going to flip the other way completely? And it's just weird because one of them is going to be exaggerated, and I think right now we're seeing the degeneracy exaggerated. I remember when I was in school, there was a kid that fucking drew comics. There was a kid that drew shit, and it was the coolest shit. He was one of my best friends, Alex. He was a cool fucking dude. He would sit there and he would draw fucking porn every single fucking day, all day. In high school, he's like boobs. And, looking at it now, he was in a weird fucking situation. He was a kid who wasn't allowed out of his house. He dealt with massive shit. He had a pregnancy in 10th grade that ended, and his girlfriend ended up transitioning and leaving him because he wasn't a dude. Like, I understand where it could be weird, but at the same time, you're a dude who draws porn and getting paid for it in high school. Like, that's a weird situation to begin with. It's just, it's weird to kind of look at what the standard is of the internet and life today.
I would say that weirdness and dysfunction breeds more weirdness and dysfunction.
That's
and also
what I think too.
Dysfunctional weird people attract each other too. So,
and they become louder and louder because they're in a bigger group.
And I would say that if there's weird parents, first of all, I would say that a lot of the very strange people online, they're just 16-year-olds that will grow out of it to a certain extent. Not saying that they're going to now be churchgoers or something.
It's a stage, Dad.
It's a little bit of a stage, but then also a lot of them, they're just some of them are normal, some of them are just not the most mentally well. I would say that a lot of them probably just will end up not having kids. They're not going to have a family unit. going
seems like
forward.
that's the way a lot of people are now going. Is now the weirdos are the people having kids.
Well, this is the interesting thing is, you look at the stats, and if you look at just the raw data in terms of like religious leanings and political leanings, people tend to become more liberal than their parents. They tend to switch from Christianity or Islam and go to becoming an atheist
Agnostic
or something,
or-
or agnostic, or just like a humanitarian, some spiritual, not religious, something along those lines. So incorrectly, people will say, oh, look, Christianity, Islam, they're dying, religion's dying, conservatism's dying, everything's going in this
And
direction.
you look at their 35, 40, and all of a sudden they're all turning right back around.
Not necessarily. No. The bigger point that I was going to get to is who's having children.
Yeah.
It's the Muslims, it's the conservative Christians, the Mormons. It's the conservative people. People in cities aren't having kids. They're not they're by the time they're getting married, a lot of them are like 35 or 40, and building that along to the point where they could have kids, they may have to go through
IVF, where you're dealing with massive amounts of shit.
Medical intervention to even have a single kid. To repopulate the earth, you need to have at least 2 kids just to break even from where you were
And that goes back to the Christian thing. If she was over 40, that means you have a higher level of Down syndrome. You have a higher level of comorbid mental illness. There's a lot of things that kind of function in that realm that's scary. You don't want to deal with that shit. And if people are really just kind of waiting and building their lives before they have kids, and they're like, oh, 40, oh, fuck, my internal clock's burning, and I'm done now. And I didn't realize. It's almost like we're numb to really understanding what we're here to do.
Yeah, I would say that a lot of people have been misinformed in modern day of, oh, you could wait till you're later to have kids. And, that's true to a certain extent.
30,
but at the same
35.
Yeah, I mean, 35 is a geriatric pregnancy. I don't want to get this into the manosphere talk. It's not like I necessarily subscribe to that stuff. But at the same time, if you wait until you're 30 to start wanting to have kids and don't have the partner yet, and you want to do it, in the proper
can't build a life at
sequence.
the end.
It's a bit more difficult, and a lot of people end up trying to scramble. But yeah, kind of getting back to my point. People want to say that shifting in one direction or another. At the end of the day, people tend to become more liberal in their life if they're born conservative, and it kind of shifts more in that direction, and the liberals becoming more conservative as they go on. But there's just the sheer amount of children that conservative people have, and those groups kind of outweigh that by a large margin. So I think because of that, I don't think things are going to change that much.
No, it definitely does. And it's interesting to kind of just look at the way the world is, because the world is kind of in a weird gray area right now. Nobody really genuinely knows where it's going. Nobody really genuinely knows what's going to happen. Art, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a fucking blast, man. Go check out Gamer from Mars. He's an absolute amazing fucking dude. Love talking to him. Love chatting with him. One of the best people on the fucking platform. Go check out G Fuel. Use code RMTS or Verlis at checkout. Go check out Manscaped, RMTS 20. Go give them all the love. Show them that they love us. And, just because we're men doesn't make us bad. We'll see you fucking next time.
Unfortunately, 2 hours is not long enough to get into the problems with social media.
Yeah.